Linda, what do you think of solos?
Honestly, I like them sometimes, and sometimes I can find them very indulgent and a bit wanky.
Well, I really like them, and so in this episode we're going to be talking all about solos and virtuosos. Virtuosos have popped up frequently in history. In the 9th century, the composer and oud soloist Ziryab was said to have memorized over 10,000 songs. He was such an impressive instrumentalist that he added an extra string to his oud, used an eagle's beak instead of a pick, and if he couldn't get any more legendary, allegedly brought asparagus and cool hairstyles to Cordoba in Spain. Think that takes the cake? One piano virtuoso and composer in the 19th century, Clara Wieck, was so famous she had a tort named after her, and then she married the composer Robert Schumann, who may have totally cramped her style. Unlike style-cramping spouses, changes in music technology often expands virtuosic style. Improvements in piano technology, like cast iron frames in the 18th century, meant that the piano could take even more string tension, and meant virtuosos like Liszt and Chopin could rock out even harder and louder, and play for bigger crowds. In Harlem in the 20s, virtuoso stride pianists like Willie the Lion Smith, James P. Johnson, and Fats Waller would try to outplay each other, developing even flashier styles of piano flourishes and throwing down their best and fastest playing. But virtuosity isn't just about crowd pleasing. Soloing in the impenetrable, speedy, and complex musical language of bebop in the 40s, musicians like Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, and Thelonious Monk created jagged, defined, and jarring music, creating an emblem of protest in an era of racial discrimination. Virtuosity often flows from musicians believing in something bigger than themselves or spiritual traditions. It seems we'll always have people pushing the boundaries of their craft. The microphone helped virtuosos like Minnie Riperton do vocal gymnastics that would have otherwise been drowned out by the other instruments. And the invention of amplified instruments like electric guitars brought new kinds of performances too. While it's tempting to see it as the pinnacle of musicianship, at the end of the day, music is a form of communication, and it's not just about what you're saying, but how and why. So Linda, do you still hate solos? Are you still
I don't hate them. I just like them sometimes. And we did speak to a bunch of soloists to find out about their process.
It's so powerful what one person can do, and I think without constant practicing, this life is not possible. I try to do 6 to 8 hours every day. It's been that way for many years. The music playing process can always be a little bit better, a little bit sharper, a little bit more exciting, or a little bit more moving. You seem to just split hairs and it seems to get just refined a little bit more. So it's a very addictive process for me because the ability to really go from the heart to the fingertips or the head to the fingertips, it is truly exciting.
If you can make an instrument sing and actually connect with people, that's gives the guitarist and the song a different personality. How can you create a voice with an instrument? Like, that's magical. That's something really, really interesting. You know, when you hear that, like some of those Eddie Van Halen solos, it's like this guy's unleashing and you can hear his stank and his attitude. If you can pull that off correctly, I think that's why people love it.
Well, a good soloist, I think, has to be a natural leader of sorts because you're standing in front of the orchestra. Communication is probably the key to being just a great musician, regardless of whether you're a soloist or a chamber musician. It kind of works like two people in a relationship, expressing their ideas within the music.
Look, I'm not going to be a violin or piano virtuoso overnight, so I actually want to explore a different type of solo, and that is freestyle rapping.
Yes.
Yeah, he knows it.
This is freestyle off top of the dome. Big boy, city. You know my home.
In hip hop, the most important and powerful instrument isn't the turntable or drum machine, it's language. And the height of freestyle rap is wielding this power with unbelievable ability.
I think I write backwards. The lines scatter. I decode them as I practice.
Fight back her now. She won't make it through the weekend. If you're scared, go to church. Bitch, you should have been a deacon.
Improvised, fast, and cutting, this lyrical athleticism makes for vocalized solos just as mesmerizing as anything Jimi Hendrix ever laid down. And direct from Sydney, Kwame is going to show me how it's done.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, look. Came in the ABC. Lights, camera, action, like 1, 2, 3. And I'm with Linda. Swipe right, Tinder. Came through clean with the drip that I spit. Lyrical whiz. Nobody do it like
This.
yeah.
I feel like people get excited about rap because of the diversity that comes with it. I think the wordplay, definitely like the beats as well, because it's all about rhythm and like what gets you moving.
Wake up in the morning, who do I see in the mirror? Got the message so depressing, it just really made my heart cry. How we keep depending on the people we forgiven. Bow my head, connect with heaven. In my dreams, I'm seeing God's eye. Mama in the kitchen whipping. Sunday church chicken. You can check us out. We'll show you how we live in.
I feel like rap doesn't have any boundaries, so anything can come into it. So I think that's what people really gravitate towards too and find interesting.
Yeah, I feel like you can't throw away how nerdy rappers are in terms
Yeah.
of language.
Yeah, you can't.
Using alliteration or using cadence.
Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
about that and those parts that make it
Yeah,
up.
for example, if I was to be rapping in like a triplet flow, da 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 da. Da 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 da. So I'm kind of like that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Ghostface Killer, I think he was talking about the stop-start kind of flow that Skepta used in Praise the Lord, where he's like, right, like all the hook is like I came, a da 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 da.
I came, I saw, I praise the Lord, then break the law. I take.
It really helps get across to people because they're remembering that. So you can start like almost mumbling it. From you mumbling it, it then translates into the words, and you remember that because of the rhythm and
Yeah.
how it caught you.
What's on your mind right now?
I was thinking about you being tall.
Tall. Okay, cool,
Okay.
cool. So we got the beat.
He's tall,
Yep.
but not too tall. I might swipe and then I'll fall in love with a man on an app, and then I'll need to have a nap because he bores me on my date on a Tuesday night. I can't rate him high enough.
Friday.
It's Friday. Okay, well, let's talk about freestyling a bit. How does it work?
I think in general, freestyling is more so about writing like free form. So without a subject matter. Mostly freestyling was rapping about how good you were off the top, which is like slang for like
okay.
just like whatever
Top
you
of my head.
Yeah, top of my head, like whatever you see, like you just rap about. Whenever I'm writing like a track, I'm in the studio and then like I've got the beat there and I'm just like trying to figure out the flow. I'll just be like, like I just be like looking like at someone being like, yeah, and they'll be like, yeah, and then like I might say just like one word where like I'm at ABC, and then okay, yeah, then I write that down and I'm like, okay, how can I expand from that? But even if we fall out, we gonna turn it all around, feed the people out, sound, grab somebody, tell them that you love them, put your hands together, miscommunication be the reason you ain't listen, could've asked me how I'm feeling right now, round and round my tracks getting spun like it's a merry-go, I'm heavy dough, getting money like Homer Simpson dough, and I could never trust a groupie, no.
How can I get better? Give me some tips. Like, what words should I be thinking about?
I mean,
what can
like-
help me, like, spark things?
I don't know, maybe like look at something here. So like I see a wheel. Okay, cool. You look at that, but then what else does a wheel kind of give you? Like, okay, you're driving,
Okay.
you're moving somewhere, you're going places.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like something like that.
Wheel
So-
gives me action.
Ooh,
A
okay.
reaction.
Yep.
I got serious satisfaction. I'm working too hard.
Ooh.
Got a bit of a sweaty thing going on.
Yep. But like that was cool though.
How do you get through a block if you don't have any ideas?
Don't try to force it because you're gonna be doubting yourself each time. Like, no, this isn't good. Like, you start questioning everything that you do. So I think definitely just taking a break. Like, go for a walk, listen to other music, take 5, whatever it is you need, and then come back in with a different mindset, like just fresh thoughts. And all right, cool, back into it.
My headphones snapped at a DJ gig. I was looking at a guy, not at his rig.
No.
He was dancing, I was feeling the flow.
Yeah.
And then I had to run out and go. Woo! Oh.
On a scale of not getting goosebumps to me dramatically failing at dancing, where would you place that?
Okay, not as uncomfortable as you failing at dancing, but definitely towards that spectrum, probably like a 7 out of 10. It's such a multitask in your brain because Kwame's so good as well, but you're thinking about the beat, you're thinking about what words you're going to use and the ideas that you're forming. You want to sound cool, so you want to have cool ideas and sentences. You're thinking about your vocab as well, and I think honestly, it just comes down to having a bit of talent, but practicing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that virtuosos are just born, but there's so much effort and time that goes into it.
It pays off because we love watching these talented freaks of nature do their thing. What's your fave solo? Let us know below and don't forget to check out the other apps.